Today's video is about recycled music. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about the common practice of referencing earlier music. Long-running series will reuse music from one game to the next as a tribute or Easter egg. Sometimes two unrelated games owned by the same company will have this. Sometimes it's just a cute nod to another game that the developers like. That's fine. Actually, in some cases, it becomes like an elaborate running gag. Check out Totaku's song. Composer Kazumi Totaka originally inserted it in the Game Boy game X, and has been hiding it ever since in all kinds of games across Nintendo's library. Usually it's hidden away somewhere as a secret. At the time of this video, it's been in at least 20 games. I say at least, because there are some that are contested, and there may even be several games out there that hit it so well that we just haven't found it yet. This is a harmless, fun little gem. Now, what's the deal with Jurassic Park for NES? Does that sound familiar? If you're a Commodore 64 music enthusiast, it should, as this is very extremely similar to the loading music from Comic Bakery, one of the most famous Commodore 64 songs that helped to make Martin Galway one of the most legendary musicians of 1980s computer games. Jonathan Dunn, who composed the music for Jurassic Park, is not Martin Galway. Was he making some kind of tribute to Martin Galway's music? It's really weird because it's not an Easter egg. It's not hidden away in a secret area. This is the main background music it plays on the first level of the game. And it's not just a straight cover. It starts off with a more original composition, and then just turns into Comic Bakery for the rest of the duration. It's not a completely faithful rendition either. Some notes are misplaced here and there, as if he just did it from memory. And I guess later it changes key, so I guess it's a little different. Jonathan Dunn and Martin Galway did work together for Ocean, and definitely knew of each other's work. Word is that Dunn just wanted to do a cover, and it was nothing malicious, but details are hard to come by. I can't really speculate, I'm just gonna say it's weird. What's a little more obvious is this one. Here's some of the music from Jet Set Radio. Don't focus on the voice, just the accompanying instruments. I know, that's hard to do when someone is screaming incoherently. Anyway, now listen to this one in Sonic Rush. That's pretty similar. The samples and such are different, it's a different tempo, not exactly the same music, but still very similar. Could this be a case of cryptomnesia? Well, no. Both are by the same composer. He pretty much took an existing song, made a few changes, and reused it for a totally different game. Different game, different franchise, different company. It's not any kind of noticeable tribute or reference since the two games aren't related, so the composer pretty much just recycled an old song. But at least it was modified. That's not so much the case with this next example. Now, you may have heard of the classic arcade game Defender. It had a sequel named Stargate. No connection with this. When Stargate was ported to NES, Yukio Kaneoka was in charge of the music and sound effects. If you don't know who that is, he's one of the composers for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, which came out the same year. Did you catch that? That's the music when your opponent is introduced. Now, listen to the music that plays when you start a new game in Stargate. Yep, he used the exact same music for both games. The only difference is in Punch-Out! He removed the part that sounds like Star Wars. It's not the only commonality between the two games. They share a lot of the exact same sounds, too. That's pretty blatant, huh? Hold on, I'm just getting started. Motoi Sakuraba did this multiple times throughout his career. Here's a song in the game Star Ocean Till the End of Time, which he'd used 5 years earlier in Valkyrie Profile. They don't sound quite the same, but are definitely intended to be different arrangements of the same song. He even gave both of them the same name. Not only that, but take a look at this other song in Valkyrie Profile. Virtually identical to this one he did the year before in Star Ocean 2. I know composing music is really hard work, but you're not supposed to do that. Now, here's a really weird one. This one is from my favorite MMORPG, City of Heroes. Now, City of Heroes is kind of weird with how it approaches music. It doesn't have looping background music. It just has short musical themes like this one that play for a few seconds when you enter a new zone. So yeah, this is the theme for New Overbrook in the Fault Line. I played it for you twice, so hopefully you remember it when I show you this clip from Gauntlet Dark Legacy. That's interesting, isn't it? You hear the first part of that theme before the song continues on in a different direction. This version of the music does loop, by the way. So what about the rest of that zone theme I played earlier? Oh, that's in a different part of the game. So it seems like the City of Heroes version was cobbled together from bits of these two different level themes and turned into one pretty smoothly integrated piece. Now let's look at the game's credits. City of Heroes music was composed by Michael Henry. Gauntlet Dark Legacy's music was not composed by Michael Henry, but he is mentioned under special thanks. That's really weird. Special thanks for what? Composing part of the music, but not enough to get credited as a composer? I don't get it. I can imagine so many different scenarios here. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, I'm just making baseless guesses here. Maybe Michael Henry sent the Gauntlet team some samples of his stuff he was working on and they didn't hire him, but somehow his samples ended up in the game? Or maybe he was hired and collaborated with the other composers, but then left or was let go, but the music still ended up in the system and they had to give him a special thanks because it became such a mess that they weren't even sure how much of the music was actually his? And maybe he ended up using it later in City of Heroes, not realizing that Gauntlet already used his music and didn't properly inform him? Or did he know they used it, but was annoyed that they took his half-finished work and didn't even credit him as a composer, and just decided he'd go ahead and reuse it in this very specifically different format? There could be a ton of explanations ranging from totally benign to outright malicious on the part of the composer or someone on Gauntlet's team. Again, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, I'm just really curious. For the next example, it's a little more clear-cut. Here's some music from the game Rhaegar. Now here's the title music to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's in a slightly different key, but otherwise it's completely identical. They both have the same composer, Michiharu Hasuya, so yeah, it's pretty blatant. It's like he wanted it to get noticed. Why did he make it the title music? That's the music that's guaranteed to be heard by anyone who pops the game in. And Rhaegar was a pretty popular game that just came out the previous year. It seems pretty likely for someone to turn on Jekyll and Hyde and immediately recognize it. But I guess this was pre-internet days. If some kids did notice, they didn't have the means to go tell everyone get notice. Unless they wrote it into Nintendo Power or something, maybe. And speaking of title music being recycled, this happened again. Here's a 1994 DOS game called Champions of Zula. It's a fantasy gladiatorial combat game that looks like it was conceived and drawn by a 13-year-old, but hey, the music's pretty good. Now here's the battle music. Keep in mind, this is the only battle music. It's the only music that plays when you're actually playing the game. So how obvious is it when that same music gets reused as title music in this other DOS game, Space Nightmare? Especially when both games were included in the same CD compilation of shareware games. Busted! Okay, now to be fair, I don't know for sure which of these games came first. They both came out in 1994, and that's all we know. But here's the funny thing, no names in the credits match. If you check the credits for Champions of Zula, it credits a Danny Bougie as the composer. In Space Nightmare, there's no music credits. That's a little suspicious, isn't it? Did the same composer reuse the music and didn't get credited in one of the games? Did the one company steal from other games and not credit anyone? At first I thought there was no connection between the two companies at all, but later I found out that both companies are based out of neighboring cities in Quebec. I don't know what, but something fishy happened. Hey everyone, normally when I do these videos I include all the music at the end so you can hear it uninterrupted, but that would have made this video 50 minutes long. So instead I made a separate video and you can view it by clicking up here. Also, subscribe and stuff.